Friday or Saturday. I had a dream that I was on a bridge. I looked out the passenger window, as you do when you're in the car with your parents as a kid, and you're just daydreaming. And there was a plane, but it was like the shadow of a plane. I didn't see like logos or anything. It was just like black, basically. And it was flying like perpendicular to the bridge, so it was low. But it's a dream, so you're not thinking. You're kind of just accepting what's happening. And the plane ended up like merging with the shadow of a building. And I remember seeing the Chrysler building, and then in the sky, in the dream, appeared this calendar, and the calendar was like stopped on the wrong day. I was like, next week starts on Monday, not on Tuesday. I was like, this calendar is wrong. And the next night, I had a dream about the Pentagon, which I actually didn't. I was young, so, and I don't live in DC. I'm a New Yorker, so I didn't know what the hell the Pentagon was. I just remember like being in this really fancy building, and there was like some kind of emergency, and I got trapped in an elevator, and that like the press and like FBI were there, like people in suits with like the earpieces of like Secret Service and stuff. And they came and like pulled us out of the elevator, and I remember there being a gold star with a circle around it on the wall.
Joey P on the show,
Yeah,
coming in from New York. Thank you, brother.
yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
So we've connected, I don't know, like a year ago, and because of me, I lost track of time, and I'm not very good at communicating. Clearly,
No, you're all right.
losing
You're good.
track of our email chain, and now just having you on the show. But we had a pretty cool conversation
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
about your gifts and your story, and I wanted to bring you on the show, and I'm happy that we were able to reconnect.
Yeah, me too. This is great.
So, what have you been up to since we last spoke?
Just working. New York is an expensive city, so I've been just doing my thing.
Are you psychic medium like full time?
Yeah, it's my only job.
Wow. So how does one? I guess it's always fascinated me. How does one work full time as a psychic medium? Are you giving readings all day long? Do you have a shop, a brick and mortar? Like, what does it look like?
So you know what? It's changed over the years. I used to have an office because I when I first started, I was living on Long Island. I started like 12 years ago, maybe. It's over a decade. So I had an office, so I would read out of my office. I'd read out of my at the time I lived with my parents, so they had a like a front room, like a little porch. So I had that set up for people to come like later in the day after work, and I did stuff over the phone. And then it's funny, actually, right before COVID, I want to say like September of 2019, I had a funny feeling. I happen to get a feeling every now and again about things, right? And I was like, I should sell my car and get rid of my office. And everyone around me was like, what the hell's wrong with you? Why would you do that? Like, that's your business. And I was like, I don't know. I feel like I'm not going to need it anymore. And thank God I listened, because a few months later, everything shut down. So I was doing everything over Zoom for years. I was only over Zoom. And then the end of last year, I started doing stuff like groups, like in people's homes again. Just because, truthfully, I could have went back to it in like 2022, but I got so comfortable doing everything out of my, like, I'm sitting on my couch right now doing this. That's where I did most of my readings. But now I do in person. If people come to the city, they can come to my apartment, and I'll do readings in my living room. Um, but yeah, so I used to have a little bit of like I guess you could say like a brick and mortar physical location, but I didn't really need it anymore for a while. So now I'm back, and I'm just kind of doing stuff out of my home. But yeah, I'm not doing readings all day long. I would be deceased myself if I was doing them constantly, like 8 hours a day. But I'll do a few a day. My max is like four, if you know if that, because it's super draining. Anyone who does this work, any kind of energy work, Reiki, psychic medium readings, anything like that. I'm more tired after doing that sometimes than anything physical, if that makes sense. So I try to work as, I don't want to say as little as possible, but as much as it's like comfortable for me. And then on weekends I'll do like group stuff, events at like yoga studios or in people's homes or wherever kind of people want me to go, I'll go.
It's awesome. What did you do before psychic mediumship was your career tag?
You know what? So I started, this is really my only actual career. I started doing this when I was 23, I think, professionally. But I worked in an eye doctor's office before that. I was kind of just doing like file room stuff and like answering phones and things. But I went to school for music. That was my thing. I went to school. I don't know what I wanted to do in music, but I loved it. And then I graduated and didn't have a job because what kind of job do you get? You know what I mean? With a music degree, no one was like dying to hire me. So that's sort of how this happened, which might have been a blessing because I didn't have to go into a career that like, wasn't for me.
Sure. Well, now you're just using a different set of eyes, right? Like it's funny how that
Yeah.
works,
Yeah,
right?
that's it.
What which is very interesting. Like how do you like receive the information? Is it through a feeling? Do you see things with your physical eyes, third eye? Like what does that look like?
So it's kind of an always actually. I know a lot of mediums. We kind of get everything. Like I'll see something in my mind. I'll admit I'm a very like streamlined person. I'm an Aries. I don't know if you follow astrology at all or anyone listening does, but we don't have a lot of patience. So when I do readings, most of the information I get is claircognizantly, which is just like you just know. So a lot of the stuff it'll kind of just be put in my head, like I already know someone's husband's name was Joe or whatever, or but I'll see stuff, I'll hear names, I'll hear things. And I don't mean I hear them like I hear you right now. It's more of a like in my own mind, like if you could imagine a song, you know what I mean? Like you hear it in your head. But sometimes I'll smell stuff. Every now and again, like if someone had a stroke, my arm will go numb a little bit, or I'll get like a tingle, which is not great. I don't love the I don't love feeling a physical symptom. That's not my favorite. But yeah, I get it any kind of way you can. For me, it's sort of like whatever the fastest way to get me to say it, or the most efficient way of getting me to say it is. So whatever they have to do, I'm kind of down with.
Mm, why do you think, right? Why do you think people need mediums, right? Like why do you think there are what medium I think all right, so let me just clarify this a little bit. I think we
Mm,
all have this ability. I think we all have the potential to tap into different information if we just allow ourselves to feel that in a different way that we have been programmed to feel reality through our five senses. If we kind of
mm,
allow information to flow and that knowing that you speak about, we just trust that a little bit more instead of doubting it. But why do you think people go to see mediums? Is it I mean, I know why a lot of them do. It's for the grieving process. But then there's
yeah.
also some that go for evidence, that go for this curiosity of this reality isn't what I believe it to be, and I just need verification of that. So I'm going to go to a psychic medium, and then that will give me validation that maybe possibly this is something different. But what are your thoughts? Like, why do you think um, people are giving you're given these gifts that are very salient, that are different than the average person? What are your thoughts on that?
So you know what? I think there's so many reasons, and you touched on the major one, which is grief. I think that's the best use probably of a medium is if you are someone who's really grieving and you need to know your person that you love that passed is still there. I think it can be so healing. I even know that from my own perspective. And then some people come, like you said, for evidence, and honestly, a lot of people will come for readings because of anxiety, which I actually don't encourage all the time. Because I shouldn't say this, it sounds so mean, but sometimes I'll do a reading and I'm like, this person probably didn't really like need this because they're not grieving or anything, and they're just worried about like what school their daughter's going to end up in, and if I can help, fine. You know what I mean? If grandma can come through and tell you like, or she's going to Penn State and that makes you feel better, that's great. I don't know if it's the best use of what I do, but I think from a personal kind of perspective, I think because I'm in the same camp as you. I think everyone has mediumistic abilities. I don't think I'm like extra special or anything, but I will say I do think that spirit kind of chooses you for the job. Like I don't think they're gonna make anyone's life purpose or mission about being a medium if it's not supposed to be. You know what I mean? So I think for me, I learned so much too. You know what I'm saying? I learned a ton just from reading other people and the questions that other people ask that I have to kind of ask spirit. And I'm like, oh, I never thought to ask that. And I learned a little something today. Or so I think there's so many different reasons. But as far as the evidence goes, I think that's another really important one because when you get mediums, like myself, who I've been studied in a lab. I don't know if you've ever had another Forever Family Foundation certified medium on, but I've been certified through Forever Family Foundation. We could talk about that later too. But I've done so much for like the scientific side of things. And personally, I think that is maybe even more or just as important as helping grieving people, because I think our society, our paradigm, it's got to catch up with what's actually happening in reality. And, I think evidence is so important, because if a medium under, controlled scientific conditions, blinded and, all that stuff, can produce results, it's showing that that we as people are much more than just like, skin and bones and a brain. Which doesn't sound like it's, when you say it like that, you're like, okay, so maybe we're more, but the implications are crazy. And we if that were accepted, by everybody in some type of way, I think that the world would be a lot different and we'd approach things a lot differently. So I think that's a big part of it too, is kind of choosing people who are willing to kind of put that out there into the world, and continuously show like spirit is here. We're more than just our bodies, and I think that's extra important.
Sure. So how does it one get, I guess, endorsed by like a foundation, or
Um,
like I
mhm.
think you went to University of Virginia too, right? Like the
Yeah, yeah,
Department of Perceptual Studies.
yeah, DOPS. I did a study with DOPS, which was pretty crazy. But Forever Family, so they don't solicit anyone, they don't approach anybody. I know some places that certify do, but a lot of people who certify mediums, you have to pay. Like you pay them, and then they just kind of like, give you whatever. Forever Family doesn't do anything like that. You have to apply, then you're interviewed, and then after they approve you, and realize that you're not, like a crazy person or something, then you can take the test. And the test is basically you have to read. When I did it, it was 5 people. I don't know if they changed it up and added more people, but you have to read them, and they're trained sitters, meaning they went through a training so that they know not to give you any information. They know just to say yes, no, maybe, I understand, I don't understand. Um, facial cues. They're trained to kind of like not react at all, which can be nerve-wracking, because usually when you read someone, like if you say something that's meaningful or correct, they'll be like, "Oh my God," like there's that human interaction. Whereas with the Forever Family, they're just like, "Yes," you know what I mean? I'm like, "Oh, I guess you understood it. Great." And then after you do the readings, they grade them actually based on how specific they are and how accurate, because you can't just be accurate and not specific, because then anyone could, you know what I mean? You could say anything, and if it's general enough, whatever. And then once they do that, they have some kind of like statistic that they use, like calculation. And then if your numbers high enough after the statistical calculations, then you can work for the foundation. And it's all volunteer. I've never gotten paid for anything for them. We just do it because we like to do it. So that's a really good one. And then I went to DOPS because of Forever Family, because I guess it was Ed Kelly. He must have reached out to Forever Family and asked the founder, his name's Bob Ginsberg, if he had any particular mediums that he recommended. And I think he sent 5 of us. I don't know who the other ones are, because everything was kept very, like, it's a scientific study, so you're not supposed to know anything about it. I know one person who I think, well, I'm pretty sure did it after I found out years later. She happened to mention it, and I was like, "Oh, you did it too." Um, but yeah, so that's how I got hooked up with DOPS. But Forever Family is usually a really good resource for the scientific stuff, because they're sort of very well respected for people who study consciousness and afterlife science and stuff. So they kind of know that the mediums are reputable and can, perform at a high level, and we really respect the science and stuff. So that's sort of how that happened.
Mm. Did they ever tell you what your number was?
No, they don't tell you. I wish I
Really?
knew what my score was at Forever Family, but they just told me I passed.
Did they
But
ever
I
tell
don't.
you like what the standard is for to what is the
No, you know
baseline?
what? I don't know what the bait. They keep the process very hush hush, unless you're like one of the people doing it, because they don't want any like information leakage and stuff. So I really don't know much, but I did hear once someone said that I think you have to be above like 85% accurate. I'm pretty
Really?
sure. Yeah, I think it's pretty high. You can't just be like 50% of the time, and they're like, "Oh, you're great." Like it's got to be really high. And again, specific too. Like they have a metric for specificity, not just accuracy.
What do you think personally your accuracy level is? Like, if you had to put a percentage on it and
Um,
try to be non-biased as possible, right?
I'm going to be honest, I really don't know. I would never say 100% because nobody's 100% at anything. Like anyone who says that about anything is crazy. But you know what it is? I don't get the feedback often. Like there's so many times I'm doing a reading where somebody, I'll be saying something and they're like, no, I don't know who, John is, or I don't know what this is. And then after the fact, like I'll see them at an event years later and they're like, you told me, blah, 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 and I didn't know who it was. And then I went home and my mom told me that, that was my uncle's wife and I had never met her and I didn't know. So it's very hard for me to tell like what the accuracy is because so much stuff is figured out later. Like I always joke, and when I teach people or they ask me for tips on how to do what I do, one of the number one rules is don't always listen to the person that you're reading or listen to the person sitting in front of you because it's a lot of pressure, right? Like people get nervous during a reading, they're not thinking. You also have to think of like everyone that you've ever known. You know what I mean? It's a lot. So I've had people forget their own mother's names during a reading, and then by the end of it, they're like, "Oh yeah, my mom's name was Anna. I wasn't thinking of her." You know what I mean? So it's really hard to say, but I mean, I guess I could say like a reading. I mean, maybe 90% of the things I say people understand. But again, it could be higher. I don't really know because I don't always get the feedback.
Yeah, that's true. You don't get the immediate feedback like you would in a clinical study or a
Right,
scientific study because of all the controls of the variables, and then have that
right,
well, you might not have the instant feedback because of the scientific process, and they need to
right.
analyze all the statistical significance of the readings, and so I get that part. So it could be, and also like people are trying to fit, like when you're giving a reading, they're trying to fit those puzzle pieces together. So I
Right.
wonder how much they're actually like listening to you, like when you're giving the reading, like they're taking things and they're trying to fit it into the puzzle. So it could be like a square piece
Right,
they're trying to put into a circular,
right.
hole, and then they miss an important piece that you're saying. Because I've seen a lot of different readings now. I've been a part of
Hmm.
it, some different readings, and I find it so fascinating how it's not like a linear process. It's like it can be sometimes all over the place. Like it's like, do you resonate with this? And all of a sudden something else is coming in. So like when you're receiving information, like how does the information come to you? Like how do you know like you need to say this or you should say that?
Well, you know what? So I've been doing it. I've been doing it a long time. Um, Countless readings. I don't even know how many thousands. So I can definitely, like, I know the difference. I remember when I started, it was kind of hard for me to, I'm like, is this just me? Or like, am I supposed to say it? Am I not? Like, is this coming from spirit? Is it coming from my own mind? Now it was very subtle, but now it's like, I know when something's not from me. Like I almost can't explain it. It's just, it feels different. It feels like it's coming from somewhere else or someone else. But it's funny because sometimes during a reading, I will get something that I don't say right away. This is sort of answering your question. It's a little bit more specific, but uh, I'll like hear something right in the beginning. Okay, I'll give you an example. The other day, I was doing a reading for this woman, and her cousin passed away. And one of the first things her cousin showed me was an earring from, I don't know if you remember the game from the 90s, the Pretty Pretty Princess. It was like a board game where you had to like where you would I had a lot of, all my cousins were girls, so I played I played a lot. But you had, oh, so yeah, yeah, I don't know. I'm like the only boy. I have one other cousin, and he was a little younger than me, so we didn't always, But anyway, it was a game you had to play, and like you went around the board, and you would win like different pieces of jewelry, and at the end, like if you collected the whole set, you won, right? So I kept seeing the earring from it. It's like this little plastic dangly earring. So I'm like, what the hell does this mean? But I knew like kind of not to say it in that moment. I knew to save it for later. Um, so then we were talking to her cousin, and it was funny. Her cousin, in my mind, kept pointing to her ear, and I'm like, what the hell? Like, what does this mean? So I was like, your cousin's pointing to her ear, but the way she was doing it was like kind of yelling at me a little bit, like, just say it, like, just say the ear. So I'm like, either there's something significant about an ear, or like someone's deaf. I was like, I don't know what else to tell you. There's something here. And I said to her, I was like, but oddly enough, she did show me an earring earlier, and it was like at a critical point in the reading. And she said when her cousin was on her, when she was passing in hospice, she said to her cousin, if I go to a medium after you die, you have to bring up your earring, your dangly earring that you that you have on. And I was like, oh, that's so funny. Like, but if I would have said it earlier, not that it wouldn't have been impactful, but it was better in that moment. Like, because we were talking about something a little more important, and she was telling me like how she really needed to know her cousin was there, and then that came up. So sometimes like I don't even know why I get a feeling I shouldn't say something or I should. So it really depends on kind of what they're making me feel, and when I'm supposed to say something, when I'm not. And other times too in a reading, like I'll just be talking, like I'm not even trying to give information, and I'll just say something, and someone's like, "Oh my God," like my grandmother grew up in Tennessee, and it just like came out of my mouth like by accident. So they're always using you during a reading, even if you don't realize it. So a lot of it's just kind of like getting out of your own way. You know what I mean?
Sure. And you keep saying reading, and I'm going to ask the unpopular question
Hmm.
because no one really likes to think about this.
Hmm.
Are you reading the person's psyche who has the memories of these individuals? Or are you getting information from sentient beings that are separate, that are in some different dimension?
Hmm. So I for sure feel that it's people's loved ones, 100%. Just because, I mean, listen, I guess I could be wrong. We'll find out when we die. Um, but it's just, with energy doesn't lie. Like it's very hard to, like here in the physical world, you can lie. People can't really read your mind, but you can read energy. And they've kind of explained to me like on the other side there's no illusion, there's no like mask, no one can pretend to be something that they're not. It's just not how it goes with energy. I could, and us as people, we could misinterpret like what we're experiencing or feeling, but if you have that like gift of discernment, some people will call it, I think that comes from Bible stuff, which I'm really not a big Bible person, but I know about it. um it's just a different feeling, like even because I'm not, I try not to be too out there, right? Like I try to stay as grounded as possible. But I've communicated before with like spirit guides and what some other people would call like angels, even though I don't really like that word because it means so many different things to so many different people. And the energy just feels different. Like, you know what I mean? And it's that's not a satisfactory answer for a lot of people because it comes from my own experience, and I don't have anything like third party or an objective way to explain that to somebody. Which is why I think it's so important for people to have their own experiences, because when it is somebody that you love, or from the other side, you know that like it's like asking you if you're like, well, you just ate a cherry Jolly Rancher. Are you sure it was cherry? Like how can you prove it to me? You know what I mean? Just because it was red, I don't know that you really tasted that. What if it was watermelon? You know what I mean? Like you have to kind of just trust the person who's experiencing it, which is hard in this world for sure. So that's why it's good for people to have their own experiences, because you can kind of have a similar language.
Sure. Well, that's why we have all the symbols behind our names, right? The more symbols you have, the more authority, the more that we can trust you, right?
Right, right.
Because of the firsthand experiences. I say, I experience this reality, and it can be totally different than the way that you, Joe, experience your
Right,
reality, and the way that I interpret what white is as opposed to black or red or green or anything like that, or
right.
a conversation, like how I'm receiving, your insight and thought on a certain subject could be totally different than the way that you're interpreting the way that I'm speaking about that. So, I mean, it's tough. I mean, we have a baseline of what we, kind of agree that what this reality is, but on the other side, it seems like they have a greater, vast aperture of knowing. And I'm just really into how we can expand our own aperture here in this reality and receive more um, guidance or wisdom or knowing about how we should live here, right? Because you can go see all the psychic mediums in the world, you can go to all the channelers, you can go to the monks, you can go to the yogis, you can go to all these different things, pick your poison essentially,
Right.
and receive wisdom. But like, how does it help you here, right? Like I've been totally like immersed in the Gnostic world, like Gnosticism, just because of the fascinated with their belief systems. Like they're just totally different than Christianity,
Mm-hmm.
traditional, conventional Christianity. I mean, even their Genesis story is totally different.
Mm-hmm.
But like knowing the difference between the two, they all speak about receiving some type of gift or atonement and knowledge or gnosis, and I'm very curious to that process. But I'm also like, even if I knew or know these protocols and accessing this information, like how does it help me live here? Because I still have to live here. If you
Right.
You talk to a near-death experiencer, they talk about, you know, they go and they experience this realm of being and they don't want to come back, and then they come back and they got to stay here. And each day
Right.
they wake up, they're like, can I go back now? Which is fine. Which just, how do you take that information, that experience, and integrate it into this reality? Like, have they ever given you pointers on how we should be, you know, being here?
I mean, I'm gonna give kind of a cliche answer, but I think it's cliche because it's true. Their message is usually about love and caring about each other and loving each other. Like that is always the main point, the main lesson of everything. And most, like you said, you mentioned NDEers. Most of them, that's their answer too, which I think that's sort of the point. But I do know what you mean about like, well, what the hell am I supposed to do now with this information? Like I know this, but like what do I do? Um, you know, I think it depends on the person. You know, what you do with the information or how it affects your life. Obviously I'm a firm believer in sort of, you know, everything happening for a reason. I think a lot of mediums are. So I think anything that we are given from the universe, spirit, whatever you want to call it, anything that we uncover, that we learn, you know, for our own soul growth, that kind of thing, you're supposed to know it for a reason. Whether you're supposed to like use it or just know it, you know, I think that's up to us. But I think if we just come from that sort of like love and caring about people place, and you know, and like sharing what we know, I think that's just what you're supposed to do with the information. I don't know if like I know some people, I've talked to some people who, because in my line of work I meet a ton of people obviously, at varying stages. Yeah, might be a lot of the same ones, yeah. But definitely at different stages of their own, you know, spiritual development and understanding. And I always kind of laugh at the people who, I shouldn't say laugh, that's mean, but um, it makes me giggle when people have all this spiritual knowledge and they've done all this like seeking, and then they try to use it to like, you know, get ahead in like the crypto world or something. You know what I mean? And I'm like, that's great if you want to use like psychic ability to like see where to invest, or I'm all here for it. Like, let's, you know, do it. But I think it's almost missing the point sometimes when people try to bring these like greater concepts back down into the physical world and make them physical world concepts. I think trying to synthesize them that in that way is not always right. I think sometimes knowledge is just supposed to be knowledge, and we may not really have to, you know what I mean? Like, you know, use it. I think wisdom is just to be had, and you kind of take each situation in your life the way that you're, you know, as it comes and the way you're supposed to, and you use whatever you know in your arsenal in each case kind of thing. Um, and just kind of do the, you know, if you're do no harm, you know what I mean? Like if you're coming from that place, I think that's the best way to integrate anything that you learn.
Hmm. I love that. I think, to your point about bringing that information into this reality, maybe this reality isn't made for that. Like, what if it is like we are the ones that are evolving the reality? Maybe this is the structure of reality has a rule set and you can't break that rule set. So it's enforcing all the of our limitations almost, because you look, I mean, for here's a prime example. You can talk to anybody who's ever had a DMT experience or a
Hmm.
psychedelic experience. They go and they go to these different dimensions that are totally blissed out. They receive all the
Right.
information of the universe, all the wisdom, all the guidance, but they can't bring it back. You know, like they
Right.
can't integrate it. Like I've heard examples of people like setting up protocols or repeating, replicating frameworks of their experience. You know, they had to do this. It's very like superstitious. Like it's very rigorous. It's very like I have to do this to replicate this experience, and they have a
Hmm.
pen and pad, and while they're doing the DMT trip or prolonged DMT experience, they're receiving all the downloads of the secrets of the universe, the codes and all the things, and they're
Right.
writing it down on their pad. And then when they come back, it's like it's scribble. It's like they couldn't transfer that information into this reality. And you talk to anyone, really. I mean, look at the pyramids. I mean, you look at all the sacred geometry of this world that is showing us that there is a oh man, there was a this isn't just random stuff happening.
Right.
This is, things are happening precisely the way they're supposed to happen. And maybe it isn't for us to know all the secrets. Maybe it is for like some type of evolution, or maybe this is a game that God is playing. And I mean, I kind of I like to look at it like that, because
Hmm.
all of the conversations that I've been having, it's kind of leading up to that, where maybe this reality is like just software. The hardware is outside of this place, and it's kind of like PS5 or
Yeah.
whatever gaming system you're into, where you can just plug in like, all right, this life I'm going to be a monk, or this life I'm going to do this, and you plug in the games and you play the game and the role of the character, um, and you come back and whatever you talk about love, and I think love to me, to be completely honest with you,
Hmm.
the greater love, the universal love, the God love that we speak about, I don't think it is exactly the love that we interpret. I don't know if it's maybe it's because of the word, and I think if everyone experienced love the way that the larger universe generate, like how it generates it or how it expresses itself, like you would, I don't know if we would be able to handle it. I think we would short circuit almost, because let's say for an example, right? Like I think it's how we become godlike. I think that is the evolution of man and women. It's like, can we be more godlike? And I'll give you an example, right? So my daughter is currently making a decision to, for how do I say this without upsetting her? She's going in a different direction than what I would choose for her. She's 13.
Okay.
She's made this choice for herself.
Hmm.
Um, and how do I unconditionally accept that, right? Because it's
Hmm.
not like a life or death situation. It's soccer, right? Like it's a sport. It's she's going to in a different direction than I would have
Hmm.
chosen. So do I allow the persona or the personality to run that program of, how I was brought up in this reality of, I don't like what she's choosing, so I'm going to not talk to her. Like I'm going to use the means and methods that my men in my family have used on me to make kind of coerce me into a different direction, or am I going to be totally accepting and unconditionally love her and support her like what I would interpret a God would do?
Hmm.
um because we keep saying these things like God is unconditional love. Well, if God is unconditional love and I'm trying to be more God-like, then I have to unconditionally accept her decisions and whatever that
Right.
may be, and support her, although I'm the person or persona may not agree with where she's going. I have to allow her to unfold naturally the way that
Right.
she's choosing her reality. So I don't know if any of that makes sense. I would love to hear your thoughts.
I mean, it definitely does, and I kind of want to go back to what you said about kind of short-circuiting people with like the universal love thing, because I do think that that's very true. Like I think a lot of um the version of love that some people or a lot of people here experience, I definitely think it's a um, dumbed down version, maybe you could say, or a more simplified version. And I think people would sort of short circuit from it, almost not because they couldn't handle it. I think our society is not built for it. Like uh, if again, going back to people who've experienced NDEs, half the time they come back and they're like, "Oh my God, I got to quit my job. Like everything that mattered to me doesn't matter anymore. Everything everyone cares about, like it sucks. I want to go back to where I was." We our physical world is just set up so removed and so opposite from whatever, God, source, the universe is, and what it's about. So I kind of love that you said short circuit, because I think people would. And I think they do when they experience it. They're like, well, what the hell do I do with this now? Like it's we learn that we're sort of part of a greater whole. And I think that we're so individual here. We're so taught like you're you, I'm me, you stay over there. I it's like we resist acknowledging that we're all kind of one part of one thing. I'll be clear, I don't think that we're like when we die we all go back to like the same mind, and like we tricked ourselves into thinking that we were individuals for however long our lives were, and we're really not. I think it's much more complicated than that. I know some people will say it's like, because I think it is sort of one mind, but who says I can't be me and something else at the same time? No one said that that's not an option, and I might be hard to wrap your mind around. But yeah, I think, but the way that you are thinking of approaching it, as far as like letting her do her own thing, or I think that that is love. I think as long as someone's not really hurting themselves, and we don't have to like immediately stop them because you're making a huge mistake kind of thing, even if let's just say it becomes a mistake later on down the line or she regrets it, I think that's part of her journey. You know what I mean? And I do think that that's like a form of love, letting someone have their own free will, their own autonomy. I think that's one of the biggest gifts we're given here in the physical world, is being able to mess up. You know what I mean? It's not, we're not just part of a program. Um, so I think that is sort of like the way that God operates.
Yeah, 100%. I believe that 100%. I think in soccer is such a, a mild example of life
Right.
choices, right? But for me, because I'm totally vested, right? uh,
Right.
and I kind of I look at it like how am I gonna break that pattern? Like how do we break patterns? Like how am I gonna be different than my father? How am I different than his father? And it's making a different choice. The persona, you talk
Right.
about like the persona, the ego, like self transcendence. Well, how do you self transcend it's easy to self transcend when you make a decision that the normal ego wouldn't have made or
Right.
make. It would be something totally outside of that, to recircuit the brain, to rewire the brain so that a new reality can unfold. Because I think that we get so ingrained in our daily decisions because of fear or security. We keep reliving the same life over and over again every day. It's like Groundhog Day. If we want to live something and experience something totally different, then obviously, then we need to make a newer choice, and that can bring fear because of just the primal fear that we feel because of evolution. Like getting outside of our comfort zones is not something we do well. I think
Right.
that's why some of the greatest entrepreneurs in this world have been the ones, I think, that are probably more spiritual than they think, because they're able to get into these mindsets of creativity and creation and take a chance and take that leap of faith, kind of like Indiana Jones and like whatever, that the Raiders of the Lost Ark, where he
Yeah.
he takes a step out onto the invisible bridge, right? Like
Hmm.
they're able to do that because they are connected to their intuition. They're following their guidance, their higher self, if you want to say, and they're able to cash out essentially. But then again, I mean, they're always, I think, they're searching for something to fulfill that desire that we all have as conscious creators. And I'm curious, like, what is it like? All right, so you do a lot of free things, you do a lot of
Hmm.
good for people. Like, what is your desire in this reality? Like, what are you trying to achieve? Is it, I mean, and if it's cool, if it's like you want to build this massive empire, which I think is just, a vehicle for the work, but like, what is it that you desire to create?
Geez, that's a big question. Um, you know what? I would definitely. It's funny you said massive empire. Because I'll be honest, I'm not the most money motivated person, which is, I probably could worry about that a little bit more, and try to build things a little bit more. Probably have more money than I have now if I really paid attention to it. But my goal is always to has always been to reach more people with my gift, with my work, with my ability. That's always been really what I wanted to do. And for a while I thought that maybe like a TV thing would end up being the way that happened. Um because I'm also a big believer in not forcing things either. Like, I know you have to make your life happen and take the opportunities and create your own opportunities. But I'm not like a forcer of things. I don't, like, if something's not working, I know, and again, maybe this is because of my own intuitive abilities. I'll know when to keep pushing and, like, no, 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 this is gonna happen eventually. Versus like, I'm beating a dead horse here. Like, this is a dead end. I have to pivot. Um, so for a while Hollywood was calling. Like, I filmed so many pilots, and so many things. So I really thought that was sort of the way that went. But to be honest with you, that wasn't a goal. I had never gone on an audition or anything. I never tried to be on like a medium show or anything like that. They always sort of just showed up and emailed me, and it became like, try it. We want you on the show, whatever. Um, but it's funny that never fully happened. Like, I filmed stuff, but it was never on air, which some of those were actually a blessing, to be honest with you, because some of those shows did end up going on air, and I was like, oh God, dodged a bullet with that one. Um, but now I'm sort of focused on, because social media is such a thing in this world now. Like, I almost feel like TikTok and Instagram and stuff, they're like taking over, the way people used to get large audiences. It used to be in movies or TV, or you were on a talk show or something, or and now it's like people are building their own, you know what I mean, their own audience on these apps, which I kind of love actually, because you attract like, you're in control of your own mission, your own image, that kind of thing. So that's been my goal, like as of this year. I'm kind of much more focused on getting the message out and getting more people to pay attention in that way. Um, which it's funny talking about, like, beating a dead horse. At first, I was like, this isn't happening fast. I don't know. I don't know if this is the way I'm supposed to go. Um, but something always told me, like, just keep pushing, because you'll find the right people and stuff, and you'll reach more people. So that's really,
Like, and I don't mean to cut you
yeah.
off. Like, how do
No,
you
you're okay.
discern for yourself? Like, when do you keep pushing and when you stop?
You know,
I mean, for other people, I assume, like you
yeah.
have your own
So
intuition,
I,
but like for other
I
people.
would, yeah. So I would say, for other people listening, if you're like, well, you have a gift. How the hell would I do that? It's very simple. There's a difference between feeling discouraged, which everyone feels whenever you're trying to accomplish anything. For 99% of the time, it doesn't happen overnight. You're gonna hit a roadblock. You're gonna do something that doesn't work that great, and you're like, oh, maybe I'm wasting my time here. There's a difference between feeling that, like, imposter syndrome or just being discouraged, versus like, oh, my ring light just went off. That's weird. Okay. Well, yeah, I guess so. I guess it is a sign. I hope this didn't die. That would suck. Um, anyway, but then there's a different feeling that comes when you're doing something that's not meant for you, and I'm sure everyone knows that feeling. Anyone who's gone to school, like college, just to go to college because they were supposed to, and it's not what they wanted to do, it's a different feeling. It's like there's no energy around the situation. Like when you're talking about it, when you're thinking about it, when you are, taking a test, whatever, you're doing something to further that goal that you have but really don't want, or it might not be meant for you. It's just gonna feel kind of wrong. Like it's not. It's different when you're doing something you're supposed to do and you're just discouraged. Like that might be a very hard feeling to feel, but there's, at the core of it, there's still this, like, I don't know, this drive, or this, like, no, 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 it's like when, like a calling almost, like everyone knows when they feel they're supposed to do something, versus when, I just want to do something and it just doesn't, it feels out of place. It's like you said earlier about something, square peg in a round hole, so it's everyone knows that feeling. So if you're really doing something and you're like, I don't know, like this just doesn't feel right, or those are the things that I don't like. For instance, I had a podcast a few years ago that I did, and I just did it because I was looking for, I was bored, honestly. It was like 2023. I was kind of the same thing every day, and I was like, I gotta do something different. And I liked it. I thought it was great, but it never felt fully like, oh my God, I gotta do this. And then it's funny, someone who I was almost on a TV show with stole the name, and it became like this whole thing. And I had to talk to a lawyer, and I was like, this is much more trouble than I want. This is supposed to be a fun side project, and now I'm like on the phone with a lawyer, like this is dumb. You know what I mean? So I just kind of like, the universe sort of was like, pivot, pivot. We're gonna do something else. But I wasn't surprised that it happened that way, because I had that feeling of like, all right, this is just something I'm doing. It's not the way that I feel about when I knew I was a medium, and no matter what happened, I had a pretty easy journey coming up. Like when I first started, I can't even lie and say that I like struggled, because I didn't. Um, but even if I did, I still would have kept at it, because it just felt in my soul like this is something I have to do. And I know that sounds dramatic, and for me it kind of was. I was becoming a medium, but it could be anything. You know what I mean? It could be, again, going back to school. It could be a soccer thing. You know what I mean? Like, I really feel like I have to do this. I don't know why. Those are the feelings you have to pay attention to. That's your soul, your intuition, your higher self, your superior self. Uh, you know, telling you something. You have to pay attention to those things.
Sure. I love that answer, dude. Thank you for that. That's
Yeah, of course.
Joey P dropping the mic there with that
Yeah,
wisdom.
yeah,
Bringing that wisdom in, right? And integrating
yeah.
into this reality. Look at you. Um, so I was also reading in your website that, I don't know, maybe it was an episode. Did you predict
Hmm.
or have a prophetic dream about 9/11?
I did. That was my first big one was 9/11.
What was that
Uh,
like?
it was terrible. I hated it. It was actually, no, I can't say I hated it. It was a weird mixed bag of feelings. I'll explain why. So, for those of you listening, I'll tell this. I'll try to tell a quicker version of the story because I could kind of go on and on about it. But I've talked about it in length at like so many other podcasts. So I was, let's see, I was maybe 12 when 9/11 happened. I'm born in '89, so I don't know, 12, 13, something like that. But I was a kid. I was young. And the weekend before it happened, on I believe it was the Saturday night before it happened, maybe Friday or Saturday, I had a dream that I was on a bridge, and I didn't drive at the time, so my mom was driving in the dream, and we were on a bridge, and I looked out the passenger window, as you do when you're in the car with your parents as a kid, and you're just daydreaming, and there was a plane, but it was like the shadow of a plane. I didn't see like logos or anything. It was just like black, basically, and it was flying like perpendicular to the bridge, so it was low. But it's a dream, so you're not thinking. You're kind of just accepting what's happening, and the plane ended up like merging with the shadow of a building. So I didn't see anything like exploding or crashing, but I heard like a loud bang, and then as dreams do, it just like immediately shifted, and I was all of a sudden in the third person, and I was watching our car like flip in the air as if it like flew off the bridge, and all of a sudden, and they're like screaming and panic, and then like the sky was like black and red, and there was fire and smoke, and there was just debris everywhere like under us as we were falling. And I remember seeing the Chrysler building, but I like couldn't, there was so much else going on that I just remembered it, and I couldn't put a name to it just yet. um and then in the sky in the dream appeared this calendar, and the calendar was like flipping through the days and the weeks of the year. And I remember it stopped. And again, you're in a dream, so it's not really like a logical thing. So in the dream, I in third person, I watched myself turn to my mom, and I was like, "Ma." Meanwhile, like the car is flipping, there's fire, people are screaming, but I'm worried about the calendar. And I was like, "Mom, this calendar stopped on the wrong day." I was like, "Next week starts on Monday, not on Tuesday." I was like, "This calendar is wrong." I was like, "Why is it stopping? Like, why is it starting the week on Tuesday next week?" Dream ends. The car falls into a pile of rubble, and I mean like literally what ground zero looked like. And then I woke up, and the next night I had a dream about the Pentagon, which I actually didn't. I was young, so, and I don't live in DC. I'm a New Yorker, so I didn't know what the hell the Pentagon was. I just remember like being in this really fancy building, and there was like some kind of emergency, and I got trapped in an elevator, and that like the press and like FBI were there, like people in suits with like the earpieces of the Secret Service and stuff. And they came and like pulled us out of the elevator, and I remember there being a gold star with a circle around it on the wall, which a star will fit in the Pentagon. Like if you look at it, the aerial view. And then we went in the basement, and there was like all these computers and like all this tech. And one of the computers had names. It was like, oh, there was like 2,000 people that died, and I was like looking at all the names, and I just remember all this like very high security, like government, whatever. So I woke up and I was like, what the hell is happening, right? Like last night was this dream, and there was the one the night before. And I was so nervous about the dream the first night that I tortured my poor mother. I felt so bad. I wasn't really a nervous kid, but I like wouldn't let her leave the house. I was like, "Mom, you're gonna get into a car accident. Your car's gonna fall off of an overpass or a bridge. Like you have to stay home." We had plans to go to my like a family friend's house. I made my mom stay home, and my aunt ended up coming over, and I like tortured her about the story, and everyone was like, "You're out of your friggin' mind." And my family believes all of this, by the way. Like nobody is. I was the only one who was a skeptic when I first started, believe it or not. Now I do it for a living, so joke's on me. But they were like, "You're crazy. Go to bed." You know what I mean? Like this little kid just driving all the adults nuts. So when Tuesday, September 11th rolled around and everything happened, I remember my mom picked me up from school, and I was like, "Mom, what the fuck is happening?" And I was like, "My dream." And she was like, "I know." And my poor mother, like uh, mother of a young child having this experience, like, what do you do? What do you say? Um, I'm thinking back now because I think I'm around my mom's age when that she was at the time, and I'm like, what would I do? You know what I mean? Like, how do you comfort this child? And then I remember walking in, and my this was a long time ago, so my dad was taping it on a VHS tape. He still has them. He taped like two tapes worth of the news because he actually got when the second plane hit live on the news. He was taping it. Yeah, my dad's a little intuitive too. He knew to start taping immediately when it happened. He's never done that before. But I remember walking in and seeing the literal picture from my dream, like with the Chrysler building, the black sky. I was like, "Oh my God, this is insane." So that was pretty bad. Like that was hard for me because it was such a dark thing for a young kid to see. But at the same time, after that, and I realize this now, but I couldn't put words to it at the time. I felt connected to something much bigger than me. Like, even though it was a psychic thing, I still think that, like, spirit, my guides, all of them, God, they gave me that vision and that dream for a reason. And I felt so, I had this weird feeling of connection. It was almost a comfort after that happened. And I couldn't put it into words because I just didn't have the language for it. But ever since then, I always had this just connection to something bigger than I am or more than I am. I guess, like, you could call it the, collective unconscious or something, or, whatever it is. I guess spirit, really. So it was kind of a mixed bag. It was terrifying and scary. And after that, dreams that I had, it was always something negative. I would have dreams about people who died. It was kind of a tough year after that, because every time I had some kind of psychic dream, it was always a bad thing. Like, actually, another really crazy one, I haven't told this story a lot. My dad used to go to church. Not that we're religious, but my dad's disabled, so he can't work. So he used to run across the streets of the church and just, like, hang out with everybody, and hang out with the nuns in the basement. And he would, like, help them just do stuff just to, like, keep his day busy, because I was at school and I was at work. um, and he was actually involved in a church shooting. This guy, like, got out of a mental institution against his family's wishes, and he ended up shooting the priest and the woman sitting right in front of my dad during mass. It was insane. And my dad was the person who ran to, like, the rectory and told the nuns to call the police, and it was crazy. But the night before, I had a dream about it, and I didn't realize. I had a dream that I was at that church and I was leaving, and I just happened to pass somebody who was in the church, and they were like, "Oh, somebody died back there, right?" And I was like, "What?" And then just kind of the dream ended. But I remember the church had a very noticeable and like memorable stained glass window on the front. It was like, because I lived in not a huge town in on Long Island at the time, so we had this, like, big church, and it had this big beautiful, like, stained glass window in the front that was round, and, like, it was, you couldn't help but notice it. It was very memorable. And I remember seeing it in the dream and not realizing it until I saw the church on the news the next day, and I was like, "Oh my God, I had that dream last night." So, and that was like a year after the whole 9/11 thing. So it was kind of rough. Like, I didn't want the ability after that, because I was like, every time it's never like someone's having a baby, or you're going to win the lotto. It's always like so and so's dead, or there's going to be a church shooting or a national tragedy. So it was kind of rough for a while.
Sure, I can only imagine, especially being a younger, what, 12, right? 12?
Yeah, I was like 12, 13, like
Yeah,
that
like,
age. Yeah,
how does somebody carry that burden of knowing that
it's
something, or
crazy.
even, even like the 9/11 thing happening, and then, like, you're telling your parents, and then all of a sudden it does happen. Like, a lot of people close down because they think that they're the reason why the things are happening,
Right, right, right.
you know?
You know what? I never thought that. I never went there. For some reason, I always just knew that, like, I wasn't meant to do anything about it or stop anything. I, it was the connection that I felt that kind of, now I realize, made me feel like, all right, this is weirdly a good thing, but I still don't like it. You know what I mean? Like, I
So
knew it
you
was
you
part of
think you
me.
had it to show that you had a strong connectivity to whatever that is, right?
Yeah, you know what? I think I always compare it to this, and I know it sounds silly, but I swear to God, this is real. I think it's like the Force. In Star Wars,
Mm.
when, like, the planet blows up, and they're like, there's a great disturbance in the Force. I think I was just plugged in, and listen, over 2,000 people died. How was I not going to feel it? You know what I mean? It's
Well,
sort
what
of
would
that
you
kind of
even
thing.
do? Like, how would you even communicate that? You could run to your local police department and say, "Hey, look, I had this dream, like, something's gonna
Right, and then they
happen," and they're
lock me
gonna
up.
laugh at you like, "Kid, get out of here, dude. Go.
No,
Aren't
for
you supposed to
real.
be in school?"
Right, you couldn't do it. Right, right. Go to school. Where were your parents? You know what? It's funny you say that. I actually, when I first started, I have a good medium friend who's also with Forever Family. Her name's Doreen Malloy. She's amazing. And she told me when I first started, she was like, "Be careful if you ever work with, if a family hires you to work with, like, a police department or a missing persons thing or something." And I was like, "Why?" And she said, because she said that she's done it before, and because she was accurate, they made her a suspect. Like they started questioning her, and they were like, "Well, how would you know that?" Because they don't. A lot of them don't believe in what I do, and in this world. So you couldn't possibly know through any kind of psychic means. So you must have been there. You must know something. So it's not always meant to help, for us to help,
100%.
because you
100%.
could
Joe
get yourself in
McGonigal,
trouble.
yeah, Joe McGonigal used to be a, remote viewer for the
Yeah,
government, and
yeah.
he was giving information to the police department about a missing person, like a young girl,
Right.
And he became suspect number one when he gave them
Yeah.
the information, because the sheriff had no idea what he was doing and was like,
Right.
"How did you know where she was at? Like, how did you know these information and nobody else knew? Like, you had to have done this." And so that's scary in itself. Like, you wonder why people don't come forward anymore, like, or
Right.
psychics that give information to help better that mankind, or give a warning, because the authorities, or how you shouldn't even just put it all on the authorities. We don't, as a collective society, don't give credit where credit is due. Like, we automatically think the negative, like, oh, you got this information,
Right.
you must have done this, right? Like, we don't think about
Correct.
how people get the information. It's just like,
Right.
take the information and do something with it that is positive.
Right.
Um, which, now I'm curious, like, have you had any more prophetic dreams coming up? Like, where are we headed in 2025?
Uh,
Anything that we need to worry about?
well, maybe a lot. But you know what? I don't get a lot of those dreams anymore. I think because I do this work in my everyday, so they kind of leave me alone actually when I sleep, thank God. Um, and I also, not that I don't want them, I'm okay with it, but uh, how could I put it? I think in not to compare tragedies or anything, right? But like 9/11 was crazy. Like that was like, I mean, I hope I
I think
never live
yeah,
through
everyone
another.
remembers where they were at on 9/11.
Right, right. Like it was such a major event, and I thankfully I don't think we've had anything, near that in our vicinity. And I'm in New York too. You have to remember, like I live 30 minutes from where it happened, so it was super close. But as far as 2025 goes, I really try not to do world predictions unless like something's really coming to me, or I look more at the astrology, because I find that to be a little bit more reliable than me tuning into the world, because I have my right. We all have our own opinions. We all have things that we want to happen, that we don't want to happen. And the second you can't be objective about something, is the reading is like shot to shit after that, right? Like that's why I can't read people I know. There's some clients I've had to break up with and send them to somebody else because I've read you too many times. And this is gonna sound mean, but the more I care about you, the less I can help you. You know what I mean? Like you just can't. Um, so and I care about the world I live in, obviously, so it's kind of hard for me. So that's why I look at the astrology more, because it just kind of is what it is. You'll look at, we have this aspect in July, or this thing, this eclipse or whatever, and you can kind of get a sometimes a little bit of a more broad um list of like things that could be happening, or like more thematic, rather than like it's going to be, an attack on this or an attack on that. So I'll look at that, like worldwide. But to be honest with you, I haven't really I haven't looked at anything. I've just been kind of like in my own world. I've been worried about like TikTok. You know what I mean? Like I feel like I'm like 12 again, and like worried about something. I'm just trying to reach more people. So I haven't really looked at that. But I will say that overall, my guides have been saying since before COVID, really, that we're sort of, and I know people throw this term around so often, and I hate to say like an awakening, because it's such a trope in the physical, in the spiritual, world and this community. But I really do think that is happening now for a ton of people in very different ways. No one is allowed to be asleep anymore about anything. Like it's just not the way that's working. And I'm noticing it more and more that people can't get away with it the way that they used to. I feel
Mm.
like pre-COVID, and I'm not saying COVID was the reason that this happened. I think it just happened to be an event that happened during this time, or part of it, let's say. But people were definitely able to like stick their head in the sand like an ostrich, and just ignore things and get away with it. Anyone that I know, clients even that are trying to do that these days, they're getting like bitch slapped immediately by the universe. Like no one is able to do it. It's crazy. But I think it's a good thing. I think people are being forced to level up, like on a much bigger scale than we've seen before. So thematically, that's what I see going on.
Sure. I mean, do you give psychic readings too, or is it just all like psychic medium
Um,
work?
You know what? During a reading, I'll do both. It really depends on what the person needs. Like I don't I know a lot of mediums will you can buy a session like for just psychic or just mediumship, but I never offered that because dead people are so unpredictable, honestly. That's really why I do this. That there When I first started, I used to try to do like if you wanted a tarot reading, you could just get a tarot reading, or if you wanted, mediumship, you could do that. And every time I did a tarot reading, I ended up talking to like grandma or somebody anyway. So I was like, you know what? I just have to do my thing. And whatever the person needs, if you're not here for mediumship, if someone comes through, great. If not, then you got what you needed. And vice versa. You know what I mean? So I do both.
Sure. Yeah, I'm always curious to whether or not like you're actually seeing the events unfold like during a psychic reading, or
Hmm.
if you're seeing a potential timeline and what collapses that is actually their belief in you that you see it.
Hmm.
You know, that makes sense.
So that's a great question. It's sort of similar to the way that I see it. I don't know if I mean, I guess anything can change anyone's sort of timeline, right? A reading or anything. But
I hope
I
so.
always tell
Right.
people when I think that's how it works. I think two things happen with the psychic part of it or predictions, especially if it's me doing it. If spirit says something, I always tell people, listen, you might think I'm nuts, like may seem highly unlikely, but if your so and so is saying this from the other side, like they have a much better vision than anyone here. So trust them. But if I'm seeing something or being shown something from my guides, I always tell people this is the path that you're on right now. Like this is where you're headed. Unless they specifically tell me this event, for instance, I'll give you a good example because this happens a lot. Like if I see a baby, right? Like I see someone having a baby. Let's say somebody has one kid already and they, want a second one. If I see it and they're like, "Oh, well, I don't know, it's not happening, we're not planning on it right now," and they're telling me like August, this person's getting pregnant. You're getting pregnant in August. You know what I mean? Like if I see it, I see it. But then sometimes they'll show it to me, and I'm like, "There's a lot of energy around August for this, but if you really don't want to, like, you don't have to." I always preface a prediction by saying, again, this is the timeline you're on right now. This is where you're headed. If you don't like it, the whole point of this is that this is where you're headed. And if you don't want it to happen, I'm telling you, you can change it. You don't, you could run away and go join the circus if you don't want to, get the promotion that I'm seeing, whatever it is. So I'm not a strict like a psychic said this, so it's definitely going to happen. But I will admit there are some events in people's lives that they'll tell me this is happening no matter what, whether it happens next year or 3 years from now. You're going to marry, this guy John, or whatever it is that they're showing me. So it really is a mixed bag, and I think that just comes from and I'm a firm believer in us before we get here, kind of signing up to have certain experiences. I really do think that is something that happens. So I think some of those things are those experiences that we're meant to have, and I think the timing shifts sometimes. But there have definitely been instances where I tell someone this is probably going to happen, and maybe it's bad for business. I should be like making these proclamations, but I won't do it. Like if I feel like something there's like a 60% chance it's going to happen, I'll tell you it's most likely going to happen, but it could not. Like you have to do A, B, and C. So I try to give people as much agency as I can and just tell them, this is what I'm seeing. And again, if you don't like it, you can change it. I think free will is our greatest gift we have here in the physical world. So, you got to use it.
Sure. Joey, I love this conversation, man. How can people
Yeah.
connect with you?
So I have my website, joeperreta.com. That's Perreta. You can go on there. My social media is Joe Perreta on Instagram and TikTok. I do lives there for free little mini readings. So if anyone wants to connect there, see how I do my thing. I go live all the time. I'm on there, and yeah, check out foreverfamilyfoundation.org. Or if you just Google Forever Family Foundation, you'll see more about my work and the foundation's work. I always try to promote them because it really is such a reputable resource for people who are in grief and need something.
Sure. Joe, man, thank you so much for
Yeah, of course.
coming on the show. I'm so happy we were able to make this happen.
Yeah, me too.